welcome back to the Renaissance Room podcast. And in today's episode, Bruce is starting off with a ukulele in the background. He is channeling his inner warrior, as you guys have heard, and you can still hear because he's just feeling super amped up today. I think he's just excited. He's got his new jambies on, so he may be feeling a bit strong. He should be. He practically wrestled me down to put those on him. It was a bit of a challenge. He did not go down without a fight, but ultimately I won. So maybe he just had something to say. Maybe he just wanted to, get in here and just let me know who's boss. But I don't want to dwell too much on my dog. How are you guys doing? How are you guys feeling? I hope you guys are doing great out there. I am in a space of total relaxation. I just had some really, really good yogi tea. It's the Immune Push Stress. And it's one of my favorite teas because I think it's just all 2-in-1. And one thing about me, I love when things are 2-in-1, right? Like you get your vitamins and it's all of that encompassing versus having to take your iron and so forth, which I hope you guys are taking your vitamins. One of the things I would like to share really quick in regards to diet, this is just like my own personal little tip. I know this is a little irrelevant, but I haven't told you what the podcast episode was going to be about today. So just stay with me. I believe, and one of the things that I've learned with dieting is that so much of your ideal body or the best version of yourself, actually, that's what this podcast episode is going to be about. And I know you've heard it before, but hear me out because y'all know I'm a little unconventional, right? So much of dieting, being the best version of yourself, all of these different things that entail self-improvement are rooted in love. It's rooted in the love of self. It's rooted in doing what feels good to your body. It's doing what feels a bit natural for you. I kind of shared a bit of a testimony about me, and I was never really vegan, but I was really in a state of like heavy pescatarian, more so like vegetarian type diet. And I looked up one day and I was just so malnourished, and my anxiety was like raging, which I later found out that so much of like anxiety can be cured by a fulfilling whole grain and hearty type diet. And so I started to really eat like heavy breakfast, and I wouldn't even say a heavy breakfast, but I was really just like, okay, let me make sure that I'm eating breakfast that's like very fulfilling. And once I started to incorporate that, not only did I feel better, I looked better. And so instead of being in a space where I'm like, I really need to pile on the pounds, I need to have these protein shakes, I need to like really tap into just all these different supplemental things for this diet, it was more so like, let's just flow with the spirit of love. Let's do what feels right? Let's not bulk up, because to me personally, once I'm full, and that's just like point blank period. Like I can't eat any more than that. And, it was just more so one of those things where I was like, hey, look, I am going to do what feels good. And that eventually just like totally became the byproduct of what I would consider like my goal weight. And I look healthy. I look good, so that's just a little tip there about diet. And that's, one of the things I've learned. And so in today's episode, we're going to be talking about becoming your best self. And it's so cool. I was really in this space where I was like super conflicted about this podcast. I say this a lot, but I mean, as far as branding, right? Because I was like, okay, Renaissance Room, we came in the gate swinging. Like we were really heavily built on, education, and we were built on African American history. But I didn't want to tailor the podcast specifically to that. Like I've always been the podcaster who's just been that, what I mean? Like I've always just kind of wanted this to be a haven for insight. So I was conflicted with the branding, because I'm like, I don't want people or anyone to really think that this is the place where you're going to go for the central hub. Like that's not really what I was trying to do with that. But I really love the design. I told you that this entire podcast episode, the entire branding was inspired by some like-minded individuals that I met at a previous job. And I said, why don't we call this a Renaissance Room? I had a vision to do something very powerful, right? And that was to educate through conversation. But I've been doing that for a while now. So anyway, So at this point, I'm veering off. So let's talk about becoming the best version of yourself. Now, I think that this is a bit of a cliche because earlier today, I wrote about this on the column, but just to kind of skim, I guess, to give a bit of an overview, this idea of like becoming the best version of yourself, I really believe that all that I am, right? All that I am, all that I have become, all that I continuously, become is rooted so deeply in my purpose. So much of it is just God's plan for me. I was watching this etiquette video today. I'm not really sure what led me. Oh, actually, I was listening to someone who was giving advice about how people need etiquette. And of course, this was later, tailored specifically towards women. And I was like, this is a very interesting concept. And it's funny because that wasn't the first time I heard that. I know right now the world is like women need to be better. They need to be better. They need to do better. They need to do all these different things. Like that's pretty much the message. And so I was watching this video and I'm always really big on comment sections and just like commentary. And it's really just because I think it's just a writer in me that just like has that instinctual pull towards words. So I'm always just like, what are people saying? What are people thinking? Right. And I was really amazed by what I saw. And it made me think about just this whole concept of self-development and how I don't believe that becoming the best version of yourself can happen without intentionality. But I also don't believe that it can happen by force. I think that, like I said, for me, everything that I am is just due to my experiences. Last year, I just so happened to be working as a server, and I was working doing these huge banquets for like these really, really prestige corporations. And I just happened to learn about etiquette and mannerism. And, as a server, you learn how to like set the plates and all those different things. And I was so grateful for that experience to be immersed in that. And I guess I say that to say that it concerns me because I think that it really puts people in a space where they just kind of get off their path and they start to try to become this ideal version of themselves that is a reflection of like that's socially acceptable, and it's like you really can't. I don't think you can become better like that. And I was writing about, my concerns because I think at the end of the day, it's like, I think what we're going to have is a lot of people who are going to look up and be like super resentful because the best version of themselves, it's not really themselves, right? It's what was socially acceptable. It's what was to be or to... They became who they felt like they needed to become to attain certain things, which is not them, right? They became someone completely different. And there's nothing wrong with learning skills. I think that, like I said in the column that I wrote about today, we're all in this space where it's like luxury lifestyle, soft girl era. Everyone is like wanting to travel, okay? Like period. Like we want to go to Tulum, okay? And I get that. But I just realized that we're just really venturing into such a space to where it's like we just no longer follow our paths. I think that we are just so focused on like, oh, I need to become this person because when I see online, this is the person who has a husband, this is the person who has the Benz, this is the person who has the clothing brand. And it's like, yeah, that person got there from their own path, like from doing the things that were unique and divine and tailored specifically for them. I think prayer is so important because when you pray, like if you can, try to get a prayer journal and like go back and like look at some of the things that you pray for and realize that like sometimes things don't come to pass because it's just not your path, right? Like God talks about how if you act according to his will, it'll be done to you. And when I think about like everything that I am right now and everything that's kind of like unraveled in my life, it's due to what I wrote and prayed for in 2018 when I said I wanted to be doing this, right? It's the work that I was putting on my podcast in 2017. Like, and I'm still working, but like just overall, I just realized for myself, like, it was my unique path and I'm still becoming, right? Like it's not a matter of going complacent, but I just think, becoming the best version of yourself is not forcing yourself to be somebody that you're not, like, and you have to just realize that if you flow with it, if you love yourself, if you love God, like you're going to get there. You're going to become better. Like your best is inevitable, but when you're in this space where you're like, I need to be this way, I need to acquire these skills, like people can tell when you're not being yourself. I see right through it with my laser beam bifocals, period. Like I literally see right through it because, I think it's just one of those things where it's like so much of your essence is internal. And people can feel when you're not being real. Like, it's different when you're online, because I don't think that people can really like sit with you and they can't like feel you. They don't really know you. Like, you know what I mean? You can be wherever you want to be online, but like when you meet people in person, you can feel. Like, I'll never forget, I remember seeing someone, I'm like, I could tell this person listens to this particular podcast, or just because of the way in which they're showing up right now. Like, or this person may have heard this secular message because the way they're showing up right now, the way they're carrying themselves, the thoughts that they're saying, like, you know, just their whole essence and the way in which they're moving. Like, you could just tell it's not them, you know, it's this version of themselves that they've kind of morphed themselves into to become socially acceptable, because society says if you become this, that's how you obtain that. And I think that so much of that is just rooted in falsehood. So last thing I want to touch on is manifestation. This point in my life, I don't believe in manifestation at all. I really don't. I personally believe that nothing happens unless you're working. Like, I don't believe that you can just like pull anything from the sky. Like, everyone talks about how they're a creator. Yeah, when you're doing the work, when you're like laboring, like, yeah, you could have a vision in your mind and then you turn around and make it, you know, come past, like by, you know, either hiring a graphic designer or becoming a graphic designer. But this belief that you can just like attract something to you, I don't really know. I think for myself, anytime I've tried to tap into something and like conjure up something, it's never ended well, because one, I get so fixated on the thing, and then two, I be dead wrong. Like, it's like God has a whole different plan. And the times when I did that, I was so fixated on what I had in my mind that I spent years wallowing, dwelling, hoping, trying to manifest this particular thing again, because I thought that was a thing, right? So it's just like, I think that with manifestation, it creates a lot of attachment. And we always know that God's always moving. So it's just like, to really be present for your next and to really be present for what God has for you. I don't really think you can have attachments to certain things, just because it's like, if God's always moving and if he removes something from your life, you can't be so attached to it, you know? So I don't know. I just think at the end of the day, it just goes back to just putting in the work. I think the faith comes from just like believing in your vision and like believing in the steps that, you know, it takes. But I think for myself, because I was the first year, I really wrote down like smart, you know, similarities here, synonymous, right? Since I wrote down SMART goals, and I just realized for myself, I'm like, wow, like this is attainable, right? And even still, it's now a matter of like coming out of my comfort zone. But I think about the time that it took to be here. I think about the work that it takes, and I just don't think it's one of those things where it's like, it just doesn't happen overnight, you know? And it may for some people, but, you know, I think about all of the preparation that has led me here. I don't want to rush anything. Like, I'm so content with just like allowing and trusting and having faith and just putting my best foot forward every day. And I wish that for you guys. So can you have a vision board? Absolutely. You know, can you absolutely have your vision board. You know, you're going to put your Benzino on your vision board. Absolutely. But you better be putting in the work. And I think that's the thing too, like, especially with this generation. I say this generation like I'm not in this generation. See, I'm kind of like borderline cuss. Like, I'm kind of with you girls, but I'm kind of not. Like, I'm getting a little older, you know? But one of the things that I've just learned with this generation is like, everyone wants these lifestyles, but nobody's willing to work for these lifestyles. Like, nobody's willing to put in the amount of work. And it's very easy to kind of like have your vision blurred and to be somewhat misled with all of that, because you see people like I'm going to give Lori Harvey's example, and you're like, this is possible, but you have to realize like, this is someone who's been set up, right? Like, this is someone who comes from a wealthy family. So like, yeah, this person may be the same age as you, but like, you didn't have the same upbringing. Like, you didn't have the same. And I think whenever we sit in this space, I remember when people would have this like harsh truth with me, I would be so offended, and I'd be like, this person's just a dream killer. This person's not supportive. This person, you know, and I'm like, I'm cutting them off. Like, they're dead for, like, I'm done with them. I'm leaving them in 2022, period. But like, you get older and you just realize like, you just have to put the work in, and you got to just run your own race, and it'll happen for you. But you know, there's so much that it just comes into that. Like, there's like pivoting, you know, and there's like life circumstances. Like, you could lose your job, you could lose someone in your life, you know, you can have like, life just has a bit of adverse effects that are like on your path and on your journey. And then like you may be down for a season or 2 or 3, you know, and it's like you have to like recover. You have to recover like spiritually, emotionally, mentally, you know. They say that that's like a part-timer, but me personally, I think if you're healthy and life knocks you down, like you should really process, just because I like to be lighter for the next season, you know, like, okay, I lost that fight, but like, you know what I mean? Like the wounds are hey, the bandages are removed, like we're good to go. And one of my favorite things by Jim Rohn is he talks about how, you know, life doesn't get easier, but you just get better. And so for me, it's like I really think that when you have difficulties in life and you have setbacks that are just inevitable, like things you just cannot control, which is so much of the externals, you really just kind of have to sit in a space where you're like, you know what, how can I get better for next season? How can I, you know, like I give the example of like seasonal depression. Like, okay, if you know during this season, like it's really hard for you, like you have to figure out, okay, what do I need to eat? What food, like what foods do I need to be eating? Who should I be spending my time with? What hobbies, what, you know, exercise, like whatever you need to be tapping in for you to get better for the next season. What vitamins you need to be taking, like you need to get better. You know what I mean? Because guess what? One thing we can count on for sure is winter is a season and it's coming back around again. Excuse me. So it's just like step into that space and just know that at the end of the day, like so much of it is just putting the work in, like, you know, and plans change. I think that because I've learned from my last season of just like burnout and everything, like there's so much that you can't control. So like really try to enter a space as you grow, I would say, and recognize your priorities, like get your priorities in order and like realize what really matters to you, because you can spend your whole life chasing for something and it never come, and you look up and you've made so many sacrifices, you know what I mean? And like the time is the one that you can never get back. And like there are some people in life that really aren't replaceable, as much as people just kind of want to have this like this illusion of options, which, you know, I don't fault anybody for, because I just think that the mind can't really decipher between what's real and what's fake. And so like when you're online, it seems like a lot of people like your pictures. It seems like you have a lot of people, you know, streaming or supporting or whatever. But like the only thing that's really real is what's in front of you. And so like if you don't have, you know, all of these amazing men or women in front of you, then that's not your reality. Like this is your reality. Like be grounded in that and be rooted in that, and then navigate that versus like living from this false sense on social media. And I think, you know, with entrepreneurial endeavors and your hobbies and whatever you do, content creation, so much of it is just inconsistent. Like you don't really know, like 1 month it may be a good month, next month may not be a good month. And, you know, things are always changing. It's not to say that nothing is forever. It's not to say to have a scarcity mindset. It's not to say to pull out. Like, it's not, you know, to just be like in this space where you're like, I don't want to give up. I want to pull back on this. I want to pull out from this endeavor because I don't think it's going to last. Like, that's not really what I'm saying. I'm just saying that, like, it's always, life is changing. Life is always changing, you know? So it's like, enjoy your highs, be grateful for your lows, and, you know, just ride the tides, man. Ride the tide. So I hope this podcast episode was insightful. I hope that you guys were able to garner something from it. I know we talked about Patreon. I will keep you guys updated. There's a lot of fun things that I'm going to be working on. I look forward to like meeting some people on Patreon. Like I don't know. I've subscribed to Patreon before. I really did kind of like the community. I really like just the benefits that Patreon has for its content creators. So that's kind of where we're going to be pivoting. But that will be a future update. So there's no need to really dwell there. And I hope you guys found this podcast insightful, which I've already said already. Peace.